All of us harbour dark recesses of violence and horror. I'm just a man hiding in the corner with a camera, watching.
Mr. Hitchcock, you're the most famous director in the history of the medium, but you're 60 years old. Shouldn't you just quit while you're ahead?
This is murder. I'm getting blisters just watching you.
He's going out of his mind looking for his next project.
I need something fresh, something different.
It was the knife that, a moment later, cut off her scream and her head. Charming. Doris Day should do it as a musical.
Good afternoon. This book, Psycho, is fiendishly entertaining.
Is this really going to be your next picture?
Yes, madam. By the way, try the finger sandwiches. They're real fingers.
Good to see you again, sir.
Hi, Jake.
Now, I feel like as a 24-year-old movie geek, I will never be able to experience what audience experiences when they first saw Psycho for the first time. So I was wondering if you could take me back to that Sunday night in October in 1960 in Manchester when you saw Psycho for the first time and kind of just explain that moment to me. And do you think that my generation will ever have an experience like that?
Well, I'd been a Hitchcock fan for some years. I'd seen Vertigo, and I'd seen Vertigo and Rear Window, and Man Who Knew Too Much, and all those films. But I managed to get a ticket that night in a wet evening in Manchester, and got my ticket. The audience was packed, and when the shower scene happened, everyone was so scared. I've never seen anything so scary in all my life. It was so unique, and I couldn't believe that. I thought, where's Janet Leigh? She's got to come back because she's the star of the movie. I thought they were going to find out that she'd escaped from the trunk of the car. And it was so puzzling. I thought, well, she's gone. She's the star of the movie. And she was a great movie star. I thought, he's killed her. And that was the biggest shock of all, I think, for everyone. And that night I had to go back to my lodgings, and I didn't know my way then. It was a dark old house, and I had to go up the stairs. And they had one of those time switches on the wall that the lights would go out halfway up the stairs. And the light went out as I was going up the stairs, and my new digs, and I thought, I'm going to be stabbed by Norman Bates' mother. I thought it was the most amazing film I've ever seen. And, of course, Hitchcock really took a great gamble, and he succeeded with it. That was a tremendous film. He was a courageous man to have done that.
I was reading it in the production notes, and there was just one little line in there that was not followed up on, so I have to ask about it. It just said that Anthony Hopkins briefly met Hitchcock, and then it didn't say anything else. So I was wondering what the circumstances behind that were, and if you'd had maybe a little bit more time with him, what would you have liked to have said it to him?
Well, I met him briefly in a restaurant in West Hollywood. I was with my agent, and my agent knew him. And he said, good afternoon, Sir Alfred. And he said, hello, George, and how are you? And I was introduced to him as a client of my new agent. And he shook hands. He said, I'm charmed, I'm sure. But he looked very immobile. He was, he was packing away the wine there, or brandy, whatever it was. He looked ill, actually. He was very much overweight, that huge chin. And I remember he looked quite, the veins on his neck. He was a very sick man, really. And but I was so glad I met him, just that brief moment. And so I touched the great man. It was never did I know that I was going to play him.
No one respects the name Hitchcock more than Paramount. But even a talented man sometimes backs the wrong horse.
This is Mr. Hitchcock's next film.
Fine, if you can get the money.
Who do I make it out to?
Well, are we going to have to sell the whole house or just the pool?
There are so many things about Alma that I'm assuming that you couldn't know just because there's so little footage. If there were one aspect about her that you could just know for sure, like just know whether or not you got it right, which aspect of her would you like to know 100%?
I think her inner energy, the light in her eyes, because there is so little film of Alma, I had to rely a great deal on photographs, and sadly, I don't look anything like Alma, and there's just no way, no amount of prosthetics or bodysuits or anything would ever make me look like Alma. So I had to just look at those photographs and just try and get the energy of the woman, the heart and the soul of the woman, just through looking at her face and the light in her eyes in photographs. There was one photograph that I loved of Hitch and Alma sitting side by side. They're very young, and they're both, and we use it in the film actually, they're both looking out like this, and Hitch is pointing, and Alma is like this, and it's both, and that to me is Hitch and Alma.
Right.
Looking outwards with incredible energy, incredible commitment to life, you know, amazing sort of creativity. I didn't kind of even know that Hitch was married, you know.
Right.
And I certainly had no idea of the importance of Alma Revel in his, you know, in his work and in his life. So that was a revelation to me, and, you know, lovely to find that little jewel, you know, in the history of film, this important woman, especially related to a director as iconic, as important to the history of filmmaking as Hitchcock. So, you know, once again, it just, you know, reaffirms your feeling, your sense as a woman that women have contributed so much in a way that has not been recognized.
I'm curious, as a woman who is married to a director, if you ever experienced anything that like Alma did, and if you did, at what point did it start to change so that maybe you felt that you weren't experiencing that anymore?
Oh yes, I did experience that, absolutely. What Alma describes of being sort of shoved aside, and because everybody just wants to talk to the director. Yeah, you know, when I first came to Los Angeles and I was with Taylor, who is a Hollywood figure, and we would go to parties, and I was nobody, you know. People would absolutely just, it was amazing. I couldn't believe it, how people would literally go, you know, shove you aside, and you know, you had to sort of laugh. You had to laugh. You know, you couldn't sort of. But I did sort of feel somewhat resentful, except I was sort of amazed by Hollywood anyway. I didn't really mind. I was sort of blown away by the whole thing. Yes, and then it did start to change, yes.
What was the moment that you felt that maybe it started to change?
It doesn't happen quickly, that sort of thing. It happens sort of pretty slowly. You know, Hollywood, I love Hollywood because it wears its heart on its sleeve. You kind of know where you are in Hollywood in many ways, you know, and you know when you're in and when you're out, as they say in Project One Runway. One moment you're in and the next you're out, and it's very true.
You are intrigued, aren't you? Killing off your leading lady halfway through the movie.
How are you going to shoot this shower scene? It's only that, well, from here up, I'm not exactly boyish.
You shouldn't wait till halfway through. Kill her off after 30 minutes.
Wow.
Why are you letting him do something so tasteless?
Don't upset yourself, darling. It's only a bloody movie.
More anger! More!
You're married to a man obsessed by murder.
This will not be released in this country.
Show me some damn footage now!
So I've geeked out to you about this before. I love the remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think it is a great horror film. I don't think it's too exploitive. I think, you know, it's got a great taste of horror to it.
Cool.
What do you think Hitchcock would have thought of it?
Ooh, that's a good question. What would it? I don't know. I think maybe he would have thought it was slightly simplistic. Maybe.
I would have liked to have seen maybe what it would have been like maybe if Hitchcock had directed it.
Yeah, it would have been quite different, I think. Probably a lot less blood.
Okay.
I would say.
More chocolate syrup.
More chocolate syrup.
Right.
Definitely more chocolate syrup.
Which is a film trivia thing. If you don't know, go look it up.
That's true.
But you know, it's interesting how Psycho was really that first movie that kind of, I felt, with the shower scene, adjusted people's everyday life because they went home and they didn't want to take a shower, and then Jaws ended up doing it with the beach scene and everything. Mm-hmm. What was that movie that you saw growing up that kind of, when you went home, it adjusted your everyday life? You're like, I can't do something, or I have to do something because of this movie.
You know, it's another shower situation, but arachnophobia.
Oh my God.
With that spider.
Yes.
Going down the bot.
Yes.
Forget it.
That
I
is
don't
insane.
even have a spider issue, but that really bothered me.
Oh my God. That whole movie, like I don't like. I'm with you. I don't even really. Spiders don't bother me, but
no, but that one
spiders
freaked me out. Woof. And also, I would say maybe The Shining. You know.
Long hallways.
247, is that the?
Yeah.
Never staying in a room. Never 247.
You know, you can on Halloween night they rent that place out and you can go in there and.
You mean the original place?
Yeah, the original place in Colorado.
Yeah, he wrote it there, didn't he?
I think so.
But he didn't base. Did he base it there or did he write it there?
I want to say he
based it on there, but you actually didn't write it.
Right, because I think I think he was on East Coast.
Right.
I think Stephen King was on. He's an East Coast guy.
Maybe I'm gonna check that out.
He has Stephen King has a great autobiography called On Writing. It's fantastic if you want to check it. It's amazing.
I will.
It's
Thank
amazing.
you.
But there's a line that Hitchcock says or Anthony Hopkins says over and over again in the film, where he says he's afraid that Psycho is going to become another Vertigo, which is interesting because now, even though we consider it a classic, at the time it wasn't very well received and didn't necessarily. I think it just barely made its money back. But with time and perspective, now we know it's a masterpiece.
Right.
What has been that film in your career that when it came out, maybe it wasn't as well received as you wanted it to be, maybe it didn't make as much money as you wanted it to, but you think over time you want to let people go back and see it again because you think it'll get better over time?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I don't know if I've had one of those yet. It's so hard to know that you're so close to your work and it's so critical of your work that I think it's impossible to know.
Right.
What would you say?
I love the A-Team. I think the A-Team is great.
I do too. I mean, listen, I think the A-Team was really great. It was really fun. I don't necessarily know if you'll go back and look at that as like a classic piece of cinema in my career necessarily. I think maybe for the guys though.
Right.
I would have loved to play one of those guy characters even more than the character that I played, even though she was amazing and fun.
Right.
But that's cool, interesting. Thanks.
I love that movie. In a few weeks, I'm going to speak to a senior class at a high school, and they're going to show a film to the class, and then I'm going to come up and we're all going to talk about it and have a conversation. They asked, what do you want? And I actually said Psycho because I thought it would be good for this and it would be a nice little tie together. And I got an interesting email from the principal who said, well, isn't there nudity in the shower scene? Which I thought was fantastic because I was like, even all these years later, people still think.
Feeling like you saw that.
Exactly. So, I mean, what does that say about that editing? I mean, I just thought that was fantastic.
That is really fascinating, actually. What does that say about that is that it's brilliantly done because you see absolutely nothing. All you see is a belly button, I think, and you see a décolletage.
Right.
That's it. I think that's what was so incredible about him is he just made you feel so much more scared than what you're actually visually seeing. And he was able to infuse that adrenaline of terror and unnerving, uncomfortable feeling, whatever it is that you feel when you watch a movie like Psycho. And yet there's no blood, there's no guts, there's no nudity, there's no anything. It's incredible filmmaking.
It's perfect.
It is perfect.
It is perfect.
Are you going to get to show the film?
I am. They said, they approved it. So they're giving me the wrap. Thank you so much for talking with me twice. I know
it's
I'm under extraordinary pressures on this picture, and the least you could do is give me your full support.
We've mortgaged our house. I am your wife. I celebrate with you when the reviews are good. I cry for you when they are bad. And I put up with those people who look through me as if I were invisible because all they can see is the great and glorious genius Alfred Hitchcock.
How does it end?
I promised Mother I wouldn't tell.
Oh, you imp, you've got nudity in there.
Well, her breasts were rather large. It was a challenge not to show them.